Well, yesterday, Saturday, March 29th, was quite a day for news,
Yeah, it was a busy one for sure.
fortunately. And we're here to sort of break it all down and give you the key takeaways. So,
Yeah, we got a lot to cover.
yeah, we do. So we've got a major data privacy issue that's come to light affecting a bunch of dating apps. There was a plane crash, a small plane crash in Minnesota. Um, Google did something pretty unexpected with its AI, and there have been a lot of protests targeted at Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to dive into all of this.
Absolutely. So let's start with that data privacy issue. This is pretty concerning when you hear about the scale of it.
It is, yeah. So we're talking potentially close to 1 million users, and this spans across 5 different dating apps, all from the same company, MAD Mobile Apps. And the names are, well, kind of specific. We've got BDSM People, Chica, Pink, Brish, and Translove.
Right, and it's not just the number of users, it's the kind of data that was exposed.
Exactly. We're talking about really personal stuff, explicit content from private messages, profile pictures, even photos that users had deleted.
Wow. Yeah, pretty sensitive stuff. And the way it happened is just, well, frankly, kind of alarming. It sounds like there were these hard-coded API keys and storage credentials right there in the app code. It's like they left the back door wide open to their Google Cloud storage.
I hear that phrase hard-coded keys, and I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean in practical terms? Like, what's the real world equivalent?
It's like, imagine you build a house, right? And instead of installing a proper lock on the front door, you just write down the key combination on a sticky note and stick it to the door.
Who?
That's basically what they did. These API keys and storage credentials, they're like digital keys.
Hmm.
They're what allow the apps to access and store user data in the cloud. But by hard coding them directly into the app's code without any real safeguards, it's like anyone with even a little bit of technical knowledge could just waltz right in.
So essentially, it bypassed any need for authentication.
Completely bypassed. No need for a password, no two-factor authentication, nothing. It's a really basic security principle that seems to have been, well, completely overlooked. It makes you wonder about the security culture within this company. And then there's the timeline of all this, which is just as concerning. Apparently, this vulnerability was found by an ethical hacker back in January, but it looks like the company didn't do anything until the BBC reached out to them at the end of March.
Right. So that's what, like 3 months of this data potentially being out in the open?
Yeah, and you have to wonder, what kind of damage could have been done during that time?
It's scary to think about. You've got the potential for extortion attempts, people trying to blackmail users with this highly personal information, sophisticated social engineering attacks where someone uses this data to manipulate or deceive users. And then, especially for users in certain parts of the world, there's the real danger of persecution.
Right, where maybe being open about your sexuality or preferences isn't safe.
Exactly. Even if there's no direct link between usernames and the images, the content itself could be enough to identify and harm someone. It's a huge breach of trust.
Absolutely. It really underscores the responsibility that these app developers have, especially when you're dealing with such sensitive data, not only to build secure systems in the first place, but to react quickly and transparently when vulnerabilities are discovered.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so let's shift gears a bit from these digital vulnerabilities to something more, well, physical, unfortunately. The news out of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. This small plane crash into a home.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. It's amazing that the residents of the house managed to get out safely, but the loss of life on board that plane is devastating.
It really is. It was a Cicada TBM-7, took off from Des Moines, headed for Minneapolis. Still a lot of details coming out, but even from what we know so far, there were some things that really stand out.
Yeah, like what jumps out at you?
Well, just the force of that impact. The house caught fire, right?
Right.
So that tells you the plane was going pretty fast when it hit. The fact that the residents got out unharmed is almost
It's
unbelievable.
incredible.
Right. And then the investigation's already underway. NTSB and the FAA are going to be all over this, trying to figure out what happened.
And, these aviation investigations, they're so thorough. They look at everything from potential mechanical issues to pilot error to weather conditions. It's fascinating. But in this case, it's also really important to get those answers for the families involved and to hopefully prevent something like this from happening again.
Absolutely. And, air travel is statistically very safe, but when something like this happens, it's a stark reminder that there are always risks involved.
Definitely. And it sounds like Governor Walz has taken it seriously. His statement acknowledging the tragedy, praising the first responders, it shows how much this impacts the whole community.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Speaking of big deals, Did you catch this news about Google? They've gone and made their experimental Gemini 2.5 Pro AI model available for free, like completely free to anyone using their regular Gemini app.
I saw that. That's a pretty big shift, right? This is a paid feature before.
It was, yeah. This is their most advanced AI yet, and now they're just giving it away. What do you think that means for the average user?
Honestly, I'm not even sure where to start. I mean, they're saying it's got all these enhanced capabilities like better reasoning, app extensions, file uploads. But the thing that really caught my eye was that million token context window.
Oh, yeah, that's a game changer. Think about it. A typical novel might have, what, 80,000, 100,000 words? This AI can handle hundreds of thousands of words, maybe even a whole book, in one go. It can keep track of all that information and use it to understand what you're asking and generate more sophisticated responses.
So what kind of things could people actually do with that kind of power? I mean, practically speaking.
Well, imagine you're a student working on a research paper. You could upload the whole thing to Gemini, ask it to summarize the key findings, even connect it to other research out there. Or say you're in business, you just had a long meeting. You could feed the transcript to the AI and have it pull out the main decisions, the action items. It's like having a superpowered research assistant.
Right. And I guess for creative people too, like writers, musicians, it could open up all kinds of possibilities.
Totally. You could feed it a whole chapter of your novel and have it help you brainstorm ideas, make sure your characters are consistent. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
It really is a different level of AI, isn't it? But why do you think Google's doing this? What's their strategy?
Well, it's probably a few things. By giving it away for free, they're getting it into the hands of millions of people, which means they're getting a ton of data on how people are using it. That data is gold. It helps them make the AI even better. Plus, it puts them ahead of the competition, like OpenAI and their ChatGPT. It's like they're saying, hey, look what we can do.
It's a bold move, that's for sure. Okay, let's talk about these Tesla takedown protests. These were happening all over the place. US, Canada, Europe, hundreds of them planned. What's the story there?
Well, it seems like a lot of people are really unhappy with Elon Musk right now, specifically his role in the Trump administration, heading up this Department of Government Efficiency thing, DOGE, they're calling it.
Right. And I guess there are concerns about those proposed federal budget cuts coming out of DOGE. A lot of people are worried about the impact those cuts will have.
Yeah, and it's not just about the cuts themselves. It's about Musk being the one pushing for them. These protests are really targeting him personally. You've got people calling for boycotts of Tesla cars and stock, trying to hit him where it hurts financially.
It's interesting, right? Because it shows how intertwined these things have become. You've got a business leader, but he's also deeply involved in politics. And now people are reacting by targeting his business. It's all connected.
Totally. And it's not just peaceful protests either. There have been reports of vandalism, even arson, targeting Tesla facilities and vehicles. The FBI is actually calling it domestic terrorism now.
Wow. So it's escalated pretty quickly.
It has, yeah. And it's important to make a distinction here that organized protests, they're mostly peaceful. They're about raising awareness, making their voices heard. But these acts of vandalism, that's a different story. It's destructive, it's dangerous, and it takes things to a whole other level.
And you have to wonder, is it effective? Does this kind of thing actually achieve anything, or does it just alienate people?
That's a good question, and I don't know if there's an easy answer. What we do know is that Musk is feeling the pressure. He's admitted things have been rocky, and that the vandalism is hurting Tesla's bottom line. So whether it's effective or not, it's definitely having an impact.
It's a complicated situation, for sure. So looking back at everything that happened yesterday, it's kind of mind-boggling, isn't it? You've got this major data breach with huge implications for people's privacy, a tragic plane crash that raises all sorts of questions about safety, a tech giant making a move that could reshape the AI landscape, and protests that are challenging the boundaries between business, politics, and public activism.
It really was a day for the history books, wasn't it? And it makes you wonder, what connections are there between these seemingly separate events? Could the rise of AI lead to better data security measures in the future? Could the kind of public pressure we're seeing with these Tesla protests actually change the way corporations behave? Or even influence government policy?
Those are great questions, and honestly, I don't have the answers. But they're definitely worth thinking about. I think we all need to pay attention to how these stories develop and what they might mean for our future.
I agree. It's a time for all of us to be informed and engaged and to ask those tough questions. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a fascinating discussion.
Absolutely. To all of you listening, thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive, and we'll catch you next time.